Everyone, welcome back. This is Pino Trogo again from San Francisco State University. It's Thursday, April 23rd, 2020, and this is the introduction to Drawing for Designers class from the School of Design. And this is our, I forget what meeting this is, but we've been meeting online for a while now. And hopefully, for those of you who can't join live, you can review the video later. So today we're going to do a freehand perspective with a low horizon line of the two cubic modules that we worked on Tuesday. And so these were the cubes, your two pieces. So we're going to do a freehand in the sense that we're not going to do the construction very methodically. We'll just kind of eyeball it a little bit, but we'll still use a straight edge. So I'll review a little bit what we did last Tuesday. And the goal of this exercise, ideally, if we had been in class, would be to create a two-point perspective of your two cubes, of your two modules, where we open up the walls of the cubes and we create a space communicating between the two cubes. So we knock off the walls in the front and we just leave the walls on the sides and in the back. And we use a very low horizon line, so that these spaces look like architecture, basically. And to do that, again, normally in school, you would have gotten this template, which is 11 by 17 with a preset layout that would have helped you get started. And that includes the picture plane, the two cubes, the station point, the ground line, the horizon line, and the elevation. Okay, so eventually, after we do all the construction, you come up with the two envelopes, the two wireframes of the two cubes. And then once that is done, mainly by doing this process of projecting points on the cubes to the station point, and where they intersect the picture plane, bringing down verticals to give us those edges of those figures, and then using the two vanishing points to project all the horizontal lines, you come up with a wireframe. How to divide then the wireframe into submodules and to a grid can be done actually by drawing diagonals, which behave the same way as everything else in a perspective. So if I draw two diagonals there, I can find my middle point there this way, then I can project, and then I can do more diagonals, and I can get more divisions that way. Once that is done, we draw your pattern, in other words, your design on all four sides of each one of those two cubes. And then we find the, let's see, right here, find the center of the cube. An easy way is to draw two diagonals from opposite corners of the cubes, find the center. So we have the design around the cubes, we have the center, we then connect every single line to that center without worrying about what it's going to look like, because it's actually hard to visualize just because it is. So the trick is to then take tracing paper and sketch out what it might look like at the end. So that you do a hand sketch over your full construction, and then based on that sketch, you do a final drawing with the straight lines. This is actually an enlarged version too, so that's another complication, and it's okay if we leave it smaller. And then next week, we're going to do a color version based on Mike Lean's tips and advice for drawing based on his it's called Bilou's workshops. We're going to do a test with just black and white, and then we're going to do a color version. So for this week, what we need to come up is either this version of the drawing, which is a full drawing with both cubes, or what we're going to do today, we could just do one or the other, which is going to make things a little easier for those who cannot go through all the steps. Okay. So again, what we did on Tuesday was we set up our drawing again based on the instructions that I have in iLearn, and which requires again to have at least 2 sheets of paper taped together, and then with all the dimensions as described. Now, because this may be too complicated, this is the design, by the way, that I've been using for the last 2-3 weeks to do all these drawings. So if we cannot do this, we can, however, where did it go? Here. Try to do it with almost everything without doing exact construction. So what I did here, and I'll go, well, let me start from the end, actually. What we could do is we could simply draw our cubes on a regular sheets, 8.5 by 11, and I'll go over these again, but basically I just drew it real quick with just a straight edge and a pencil. Okay, so you could do this for the left cube, you could do this for the right cube. The trouble with the right cube is that because you're constrained by the size of the sheet, your vanishing point has to be pretty close, your left one, than it would otherwise be in a setup where the drawing is twice as big. So therefore, this cube is quite, how should we say, distorted, right? Because it's almost like a wide angle view. But yes, hello. Yeah, so let me just use my slate here to remember what I need to edit. Yeah, so that's okay though. I mean, one could just do one of these, and so in our final colored version, perhaps if that's the right cube, it might just be this cube that's rendered, you know, with the colors. Okay. The advantage, of course, doing it like this is that we can do it really big right away without the need for all the rest of the construction. So what I'll do is I'll show how this can be constructed together, and then I'll just do one of them, and then in the afternoon I'll do the other. This one, in some ways, it's a little easier because we're looking at it. We can see all the 3 sides, the back and the 2 sides from one single point of view. This one is a little bit shifted, right? So anyway, it's probably easier if I just do it. Hello, Israel. Turn off your sound unless you have to speak. I'm just putting this in so I can edit out this, you know, this sort of dead time bits. Yeah, so as you can see, it's actually not that different from the one that we did with the full construction, even though I did it eyeballing it, right? That's the full construction. Another advantage is I can make it bigger too. I can just enlarge it from the get-go. So, and again, the process that I used is that I built everything without worrying what it might look like. I found my design based on my little storyboard. Again, here, this is point of view 1, point of view 2, 1 and 2. And I drew all the lines, and then I used, actually used this to visualize it. Okay, so by doing trial and error, I said, okay, what could be in the front, what's in the back, etc., etc. Once I did this, then I could look at it and say, oh, that's what those are the lines I need to really do finalize, right? So let me just put this back here. And yes, so let me just do it again. Basically, I'll just quickly do this. Yeah, I don't need my little design yet. I'll bring that in later. And I'm going to use a soft pencil. So again, for the drawing, for the video, it's going to be more visible. So I'm so glad I fixed my camera for close range. So hopefully we'll have fewer troubles with that. I do happen to have a long, but you might too. I think you might have the ruler that's at least 15 inches. So that would be good if you have that. And I'm just going to quickly check. Oh, actually, how did I do this? Right. So actually, come back. This is Pino Trogo again from San Francisco State University. It's Thursday, April 23rd, 2020, and this is the Introduction to Drawing for Designers class from the School of Design. And this is our, I forget what meeting this is, but we've been meeting online for a while now. And hopefully for those of you who can't join live, you can review the video later. So today we're going to do a freehand perspective with a low horizon line of the 2 cubic modules that we worked on Tuesday. And so these were the cubes, your two pieces. So we're going to do a freehand in the sense that we're not going to do the construction very methodically. We'll just kind of eyeball it a little bit, but we'll still use a straight edge. So I'll review a little bit what we did last Tuesday. And the goal of this exercise, ideally, if we had been in class, would be to create a 2-point perspective of your 2 cubes, of your 2 modules, where we open up the walls of the cubes and we create a space communicating between the 2 cubes. So we knock off the walls in the front and we just leave the walls on the sides and in the back. And we use a very low horizon line so that these spaces look like architecture, basically. And to do that, again, normally in school, you would have gotten this template, which is 11 by 17 with a preset layout that would have helped you get started. And that includes the picture plane, the 2 cubes, the station point, the ground line, the horizon line, and the elevation. Okay. So eventually, after we do all the construction, you come up with the 2 envelopes, the 2 wireframes of the 2 cubes. And then once that is done, mainly by doing this process of projecting points on the cubes to the station point, and where they intersect the picture plane, bringing down verticals to give us those edges of those figures, and then using the two vanishing points to project all the horizontal lines, you come up with a wireframe. How to divide then the wireframe into submodules and to a grid can be done actually by drawing diagonals, which behave the same way as everything else in a perspective. So if I draw a two diagonals there, I can find my middle point there this way, then I can project, and then I can do more diagonals, and I can get more divisions that way. Once that is done, we draw your pattern, in other words, your design on all four sides of each one of those two cubes. And then we find the, let's see, right here, find the center of the cube. An easy way is to draw two diagonals from opposite corners of the cubes, find the center. So we have the design around the cubes, we have the center, we then connect every single line to that center without worrying about what it's going to look like, because it's actually hard to visualize just because it is. So the trick is to then take tracing paper and sketch out what it might look like at the end. So that you do a hand sketch over your full construction, and then based on that sketch you do a final drawing with straight lines. This is actually an enlarged version too, so that's another complication, and it's okay if we leave it smaller. And then next week we're going to do a color version based on Mike Lean's tips and advice for drawing based on his it's called Bilou's workshops. We're going to do a test with just black and white, and then we're going to do a color version. So for this week, what we need to come up is either this version of the drawing, which is a full drawing with both cubes, or what we're going to do today, we could just do one or the other, which is going to make things a little easier for those who cannot go through all the steps. Okay. So again, what we did on Tuesday was we set up our drawing again based on the instructions that I have in iLearn, and which requires again to have at least 2 sheets of paper taped together, and then with all the dimensions as described. Now, because this may be too complicated, this is what I did. I put 2 sheets of paper, but I attached them, you know, lengthwise in the middle here. So you could do that too, and that's how, yeah, that's how I got. Well, as you can see, I could have done it either way because actually these are the edges, so it doesn't really matter that much. So let's pretend that these are 2 sheets of white paper that you have attached, since you're likely not going to have 11 by 17 paper at home. And we're going to do right cube. Okay, so that means that this thing, which is called my leading edge, it's going to be this edge. Now remember, the way we were looking at it, we're not like looking at the leading edge from here, because we are positioned in such a way that we see a little bit of the right. So make sure that, yeah, this is V2 right there. Okay, well, I'll just do the method here, which is I need to basically, let's just call these 1, 2, 3, and 4 my sides. So that means that This is my side number 2. Here will be number 3. 4 would be in the back, and 1 will be on the side right there. So that's what I have to, and I'm just going to use the the battleship technique here because right now it's simplest. So I'm going to start with the big one because it's the easiest right here. So that will be number 2, right? View number 2. So I will simply do diagonals, and I'll just try to do this as fast as I can now because the process repeats exactly the same. So I do 2 diagonals on the cube, find the center, that gives me the first division, right? So that's the center of that big square in perspective. So I can do my first division in 4 more squares, which gives us, and just for kicks, let's check. This is about 6 inches. Yeah, so you can see that gives me the midpoint on the edge. So the edge has true dimensions. And if I wanted to save some time now, instead of doing more diagonals, I could measure that side. And I'm going to use millimeters again because it's easier. So it's about 15 centimeters. So that's 7.5. And that's 3.5 and also a half. So whatever you do, you can it's about there. Another nice way to divide something, by the way, if you don't have a ruler and you're like on a desert island, would be like this. You just fold that. That gives you the spot. Then you fold it again. That gives you the other spot, right? So that's a quick division just by folding. Okay, so I have now my sides, and I mean these divisions here, so I just, oops. Right there, and because I already had drawn the diagonal, I get my other spots right here, right? Again, that's based on the principle that if I have a square and I have all these lines, which I just did, right? Going to the vanishing point, if I draw a diagonal, I get all my crossings from my verticals. So that, my design might be like that, right? But then if I do a diagonal, I get all these divisions, and that gives me that further division that way. Okay, so that's it. And I'll just now draw again my little dots that give me basically the facade of the cube, right? Maybe I'll put them on the ground too. Like that. I think the simplest thing now to do is to just wrap around with these lines since we have them, and we might as well just do them all. Then we do 3 diagonals on the 3 squares that we need, which are the ones on the sides and behind. And that way will be, very quick. So here, I'm just drawing them on the edges here. So now I'm wrapping around on the left side. Let's see. Now I need to do a diagonal on the square on the left side. And where it crosses, I hope you can see it, I get my, yeah, it's easy not to get a little confused maybe with what's in front, but I think that's pretty good. So one is there. And okay. So now I do the dots there. You can use different color pencils at some point if that makes it easier to like separate, you know, some of the faces. For now, I'm just gonna keep everything in pencil. And it's hard to try to visualize anything yet now, right? So don't even try because it's okay. You won't need it yet. So let's now keep going. So now I might go from my right side here from all these 4D spots to my vanishing point. Okay. And then I do again another diagonal. And things here are going to be, you know, kind of squished, but that's okay. Okay, so I just, wherever it crosses, so I find my right side. And now, in theory, when I connect the parts in the back, they should all merge nicely into my my vanishing point. Let's see how good I was. It's fairly good. Let's see. So you can see, even though we do this freehand, eventually the system will kind of, you know, settle, you know, into its own geometry. So now I do a diagonal again. I get my spots. I have to be careful here. Where am I? Right there. And now we have completed our grid. Where is it? There. Okay, so now we have basically our template. Oh, another thing we could do is the floor. So the floor actually is kind of fun because we can darken it really quickly because we know that's not going to change. So again, we just go to our nice vanishing point. We do a diagonal of the floor, same system. Get our spots, and here I can see that I might have a little problem, meaning my last tiles, row of tiles might be a little, so I'm going to do it lightly first to see if I need to adjust it or not. But so far it's looking pretty good. No, actually no, it was just an illusion. It looks pretty good. So I'm going to darken it now. Now notice how my verticals are going to actually nicely match. And that's pretty good, again, considering that this was done, you know, without worrying too much about being perfectly precise. So I think once I do the grid here for the floor, we're going to take a 10-minute break, if that's okay. Give a chance for people to walk, perhaps, get a drink or something. So I hope this sort of alternative is yet just not as complicated. I'm hoping that people will still want to do it. So I'm just going to draw an horizon line. Now, even though I'm doing it freehand, you do have to try to be somewhat consistent, right? So for example, when I do all my vertical lines, I have to try to be you know, consistently parallel, because if I go too much like this, it's not gonna work, right? And I could use my triangle, but then that defeats the purpose of trying to do it fast, right? meaning I could do this, right? But the purpose of this version of these exercises, the people at home can do it with minimal tools and lesser effort. So once I do my, I know I need to have one cube here and one cube here. So I'm just going to draw maybe where my I will do a quick sketch here, which I might need later. Anyway, let's try and see what happens, because if I put myself in your shoes, I can't be too precious about everything, and I just have to go for it. So yeah. Now, by remember what we talked about when we said, you know, your horizon line really determines the whole setup, right? So if this is my horizon line and I put a person here, obviously this is perhaps a big building, right? You know, maybe not so big, maybe 3 stories. However, if I flip that, and this is again a tip from Mike Lean, now all of a sudden, you know, I have at most maybe a room, not even. So that object is much. So the figure really is the scale, right? The human scale is really given by the figure, the head, and the height of the horizon line. So in our case, we want to have the horizon line low because we want to make this space feel big. So what I'm doing now is I'm trying to keep this part fairly shallow right here, rather than going bigger like that. Okay, I'm just going to make a mark here so I know every time where I need to go. That's my left vanishing point. Now my right vanishing point was quite a bit close, right? So let's just say it's there. And let's just finish the first cube. So again, I just keep going back to my left vanishing point and to my right vanishing point. And I should say again that, you know, typically we would call this, okay, 2-point perspective, because we got 1 and 2, and typically there would be, you know, 1 on the right, 1 on the left. Now, the verticals we're going to keep straight. We're not going to make them converge and make it a 3-point perspective. That's we don't need to do that now. Now, in this particular instance, though, what we have is a situation where we have the left vanishing point, and then we have the right, but the right happens to be in our field of view, so to speak. So we see what I'm doing. And this is now slightly different, but basically I've created a cube where I can see the inside completely. And this set of lines goes to the left right here. But the other set of lines, which would have been these lines, go to this other one. So it appears to be almost like a 1-point, but it is really 2-point, okay? So bear with me for a moment on that. So now I just have to try to make this cube look like a cube, which of course, since I'm eyeballing it, who knows, right? So I'll just call it that maybe, and maybe I'll put it here. Let's see. So let's just say that's my cube. And now I can finish this cube. Now, when you continue, you have to be careful, right? And try to make sure you connect all your points, because it will jive and it will be connected properly, but you have to somewhat still be a little bit precise. right? So let's see. Yeah, so now we have to go back to this right there and right there. And now if I did this right, so I had my two sides, right? So I connect to the opposite points. And as I did that, you see they meet in the back here. Now you can see they're a little bit off in terms of being aligned, right? In fact, quite a bit off. And I don't know, it's probably because it's not perfectly straight, but I'm just going to split the difference there. And I'm just going to pretend that it is. And maybe I can adjust it later, but I'm just going to say that's correct. Um, okay, so that's bound to happen because we're doing it. But that could look like a cube, right? It's maybe I'll darken it so that we can see it a little bit better. Okay, so that's the first one. Now the second one, we know that they're shifted by half of the distance, right? Um, so that means that um, it means that this spot right here, and these spots are going to be somewhere here and here where they're going to be touching. So I'll try to well, not I'll try. I definitely need to have that point, which is the midpoint here. But remember, it's the midpoint in perspective. So what I can do is find the diagonals of this side, which will give me then the center of that face. And now I can project it down. And again, trying to be, fairly straight. And that gives me, you can see it's quite extreme a little bit, but that is the center in perspective. So now that gives me the front of this cube right there, right there. And now I just have to, oops, I just have to go like that and extend it. And so now the question is, how do I get the back? I could eyeball it, but I remember there was a way. And I think it's by finding, let's see, finding the center here. Trying to figure it out. I think I just also eyeballed it, but that shouldn't be right. Let me see. Yeah, I think I might have just eyeballed it. Or I could do a diagonal from that spot. Yeah, that's the other way. Why don't I just, I'm just kind of, basically I'm just eyeballing it and making it a little bit less, essentially. I know that there is a way to find it by doing all these diagonals, but right now I don't. I spend too much time doing that. Let me see. Oh yeah, yeah. It's because it's freehand. Everything gets to be a little bit. So I'm just gonna say that that's a spot that I consider okay now. Um, So if that's my back right here, I'll just continue that. And here I have to decide how much I want to see of my um, the right side of the cube. So I don't want to see too much. On the other hand, they have to be proportional, right? These two cubes somewhat. So that just means that probably, yeah, I have to maybe there. So this is going to be quite different from the one that I have in the. Okay, so I'm just trying now to. And I can see already that's going to be a little too tall. So because I put um, my vanishing point there, I probably should have put a little more here. It's going to look a little bit, well, yeah, I'm going to extend it a little bit. It's a little tight. I can see it's going to be a little tall, so I'll just extend a little bit more. And remember, this is the front, right? This is my cube. So now I'm going to see if I can get, yeah, okay. So now I've got the front of my right cube. So as you can see, it's possible to do it without too much, rules in a sense, although things will look funny if if you're not somewhat consistent. And this is the back that I again eyeballed, but let's just see if it gives us a decent. So this view is different from the other one in that we see a lot more of the, and these lines too are a little bit off here because, yeah. Okay. So it's obviously somewhat distorted, right? And somewhat, so I would say this would be an option if you felt like you could do, I mean, in a way, if you feel confident enough to do both cubes at the same time like this, you might as well do it all with the construction, that we went over on Tuesday. If, however, you feel like, no, maybe I'll just do one, perhaps this is too much and we just do one at a time, right? Like I said earlier, we could just do one or the other here, even though both of these do look a little funny, in terms of their shape. So I'll quickly do again how I would do now the grids, just because that's a general method, and that would be again using diagonals. One thing though, what you can do is you can split this into 4 parts. We can just say that doesn't get affected by the perspective, those divisions, to make it simple. So now I'm just going to use millimeters because it's easier. It says 13 millimeters, so that's 7 and 6.5 would be there, and then 325 centimeters, that is. So I'm just dividing it into four spots, okay? The main leading edge there. So if I wanted to find the grid on this first face, I would just simply project from those 4 spots. Okay, and then with a diagonal from 2 opposite corners of the square, wherever it intersects those lines, I get my other. It's a little tricky to try to do this parallel without using triangles, but you can try. It's kind of fun because it's fast. Okay, so that's my grid in the front. Make sure I got it right. And it's amazing when you put your little dots, the thing just pops, right? It's like our ability to kind of see a pattern is pretty incredible. So if this is view 1 and this is view 2, this is V1, this is V2, and I now have to remember what my design looks like. I'm just going to do a quick, oops, there, yeah. I'm just going to do that simple design now on my grid here. So that would be right here, and I use different colors in, let's see, yeah, there. That might be helpful. Okay. So again, the center of the cube we would find by doing diagonals that are like opposite from opposite corners. So we can take any set of opposite corners. In this case, the left back corner and the front top corner. And I find, and then let's see here, the other one. Once I find my center, then I could start connecting the lines. But I'm jumping the gun a little bit here. I should be doing this at the very end when I have all my lines around my design, right? But just to show you how that might start to look. If I wanted to visualize that a little better, it would start to look like this. Remember that the front is being opened up, right? So we would be seeing okay. Let's see. The only other thing I'm going to do is quickly do the floor of one of these guys. Again, using diagonals. So the first one I'd already found. So that was here. And I'm going to use diagonals again, or I can use, yeah, you can see my lines here don't correspond. You see, these lines should be matching up with that one because that's the middle. So there is something here that's, you know, not quite right but you can adjust it. You can just sort of, because it's freehand, we can kind of, and then over here is the other one. Okay, so now maybe I'll mark this on the ground here too, just so I don't get lost. And this diagonal gives me, I mean, after a while you could almost do this without really even finding it. As long as this is smaller, this is a little bit bigger, that's a little bit bigger, that's a little bit bigger, right? You can see the progression. You know, if it feels right, you could probably say it's right and color right. So now I'm just gonna try to darken it to what feels about right. I'm still maybe a little bit. Remember, this is the preparation, right? So I would I would probably adjust this even later. Yeah, these tiles somehow don't look too much like squares, but it's not too bad. Okay, so rather than finishing this whole thing now, which you could by again finding every side, every face of the cubes. So you have 4 sides here, 4 sides there. You have to find the design for all those 4 sides and then connect to the centers. I'm just going to do a single one, so it's a little bit simpler, a little bit clearer. And so what I'll do is I'll draw it on the large one, but pretend that it's maybe, you know, a single sheet, okay? Which might be your maybe I'll do the one on the right, except I'll do it brand new. And okay. Yeah, I should do it on a small piece of paper because that will duplicate what you might be doing. Okay, so this is now 8.5 by 11, you know, traditional. And what I'll do is I'll draw my horizon line. I will try to keep, actually that's too high. I'll bring it a little bit low. And it's okay if it looks, you know, distorted and kind of a little bit unrealistic because the process really is, you know, is what counts, I guess. um, okay, so this is my left vanishing point. Um, and I'm just gonna use as much as I can of my sheet here. So let's see. Well, maybe that's too much because I need to I need to have an edge here. And if I do that, I went a little too far there. So um, so let's say that this is my square right here. Yeah, let's just call it that. So now I'm going to put, now depending where you're going to put your other vanishing point, you know, you're going to see more or less of your 2 faces, right? You're going to be looking at either, you know, like this or like that. Now, I don't want to do too much so that this disappears, but I definitely want to do more here, more on the left side and less on the right side. So let's see, to do that, I need to move my vanishing point to the right, perhaps like this. So let's just see what happens, and then, you know, we can always change it. Maybe I did it too much, but we can use that trick of splitting this distance, if you remember a little bit, to see if we can get something that looks like a cube. So in other words, half in the distance right there. So that would bring us, you know, maybe here. Let's see if I connect that line. What happens? Is that going to look like a cube? I'm just gonna say that it does. And then then finish it off like this. And again, if I do this approximately right, these two spots now should converge in the same vanishing point at left. And they do more or less, right? Okay. So I'll just move real quick now and try to get it done so that we can finish the video in time. So, oh, let's do our little design again. Let's see. I'm just going to copy my little storyboard. This is so important, and every time I mess this up, meaning I don't take the patience, I don't take the time to kind of really draw it correctly, I pay the price eventually, because then things don't correspond, and I start thinking, what did I do wrong, and why doesn't it fit? So this is really important to have your design handy, right? Okay. Yeah, see, I made a mistake right there. It's just have to slow down. You're going too fast. Um, and here we go. There we go. Okay, so that was my design, and we said that this was view 1, view 2. So this would be the left cube, and this would be the right. What I'll do, I will use different color pencils. Now, that can be useful. Although, of course, if you're trying to do the drawing very precisely, the pencils might be a little thick. They actually make, I don't have them right now with me, but they make colored leads. These are harder to find for your mechanical pencil. They're easier to find for the ones I don't like, the ones where you go click, click, and the lead comes out. But those can sometimes be helpful. So we have all the grid now, right? So what we need to do, and we have this, this is the view actually that we're doing, right? We're actually doing that. So of course, if you had your cube, it would be easier because you could just look at it a little bit. But still, we know that this is our right edge, and we know that this is our view more or less. But what we need to draw now is this pattern, right, around the cube. And this is where this comes again really in handy, because this is a reference point or corner right here, so that we can move left or right in a kind of, again, battleship pattern, which I find actually quite useful, because it's hopefully everybody has played Battleship, but who knows? I personally never owned the set, but I think my kids did at some point. But it's easy to understand. In other words, 1 up, 2 over, 2 down, 2 across, etc. So we're going to use that system now, because it's again very digital in a sense, right? It's very discrete. You just go in, one bit at a time. I'm just going to erase this line since it wasn't really useful. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to just now start with the front, which is the easiest part. Again, that's view number 2, which is this one. And in fact, I will use my, I'll use a colored pencil, okay? So we can start making things a little bit. Let me see if this screws us up. Tell you what, I'll just use my okay. I'll use this one. So yeah, so this is my pattern, right? I'll just have to find, and this it is again. I have to repeat this because maybe it's not so obvious, and I hope everybody can see it. But it is actually pretty amazing that because of our eyes' ability to see patterns, um, even though it's all the same color now, I can make out more or less this surface just by the fact that these dots are arranged in such a way that they're, you know, evenly spaced, even though they're in perspective. So when I look for them here, based on my grid, um, it's actually not hard to find them. So let's see. That's the midpoint right there. So that's the midpoint here. And yeah, I just have to move around again in a kind of a battleship fashion, just trying to make sure I don't make a mistake. And I did already. No, I didn't. Okay, good. It's right there. Okay. So there, and then I go to the middle here. So what I just drew is essentially that design in perspective, right? I mean, by now, obviously, that's kind of obvious. So now I keep going, and now I do use, remember there was that tracing paper system too that we used, but I'm not going there now. I'm just gonna use this um, Battleship Trick. So I know I'm here, and I need to wrap around. So I need to go down one and across two. So here I say down one and across two. So that's that spot. Then I'm there, and I need to go across one and up two. So across one and up two right there. And things are gonna get, you know, a little tight, but, and now I'm there and just go across one and down one. So it's across one and down one, so it's right there. And if we do this right, again, eventually we'll be able to connect all these spots through the center until it hits the opposite spot on the other side. So we're here, now we go, remember I'm moving this way, right? Right? And then I'm gonna come around this way. So now I'm here, I go across one and up one, across one and up one, and now I'm in the back square, right? Now across one and down two, one and two, which is here. Double check. And then across two and up one, across two and up one. By the way, I did manage to salvage the afternoon video last Tuesday, so I will be posting that over the weekend of what we did on Tuesday, since in the morning it didn't quite work. Okay, so I'm here now. I have to come back. This connects to this, right? Right here. So now again, I keep going across two and up one, across two and up one, right there. And then down two and across one, down two and across one, and unfortunately, wait, down one, wait, what am I? I'm here, so down, across one and down two, across one right here and down two, there, that's nicer. I was afraid I would have to overlap an existing spot, which is always a pain. And now it connects back to that spot right there. So still, with the different color, of course, it's a lot easier. Um, so what I want to do now, again, eventually my goal is to really draw what I see, right? What I would be seeing if I sit there, right? If I stand in front looking at that little spot. Um, but because it's hard to visualize what these things are, I don't worry yet. I just say, okay, I'm just going to do everything, not worry about it. We do need the center of the cube. I'm now going to use a different color. And again, to find the center of the cube, one way would be to like elevate the middle of the floor until it hits another projection line. So actually, just for fun, we could do that. We could elevate the middle of the floor and then project the middle of the side. And where they meet, that should give me, should give me the center. So it would be here. Now we can try to see if that's correct. Now, I still prefer the diagonals because they're very far apart, the spots. So let's just connect perhaps this corner to that corner. And then maybe, let's see, we did that. We could even do this with this or this with, let's just do the biggest ones from here to there. You just have to be careful not to connect diagonals on the same face. That would not work, right? It has to be, to explain what I mean by that is, of course, you have to connect opposite corners of the cube, not opposite corners of a face, right? That would not work. So here I would connect that perhaps in this, right? And I would get the center of the cube. That's what I'm doing. So let's see, maybe I connect this spot to that spot. But better, no, better this one because I get a nicer cross. And I think I got it. If you follow this line and this line, you can see I hit the center of the floor and I hit the center of the side. So that's good. So that's my center. Now, because the cube is designed in such a way that opposite corners will meet at the center and there's a straight line going through those opposite corners, right? There. If I did it right, all my lines should go from opposite points and meet in the center and kind of go through the center. So let's see. I'm gonna use, yeah. Well, okay. Now I have one little design thing which I'm gonna. This may or may not be the case in your design, but remember how we had one line here that we were going to eliminate because it's part of the same surface. So I'll just know that, and therefore what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to skip that line that goes from the corners, from the middle. Well, it's essentially this spot right here, right? This spot. So what I'll do is I'll not connect those points. And since I'm looking at V2 here, that's that spot right here. So the one line I'm not going to connect is the line from here all the way to the opposite corner. Okay, I'm just going to make a little cross there and a little cross there because I don't want that one. I'm going to connect everything else. So let's see if I'm lucky. Meaning, let's just take any line, any point, and connect it. And you can see it's going to be perhaps a little off if you do this system because it's not absolute 100% like we did on Tuesday, but it's gonna be close. So, and the average of all these crossing is going to give us the true center. So what else? Let's see. things are going to get a little bit, now I have to think, this is in the front, so it has to connect to the back right there. Yeah, I'm having a hard time, you know, making all my spots really go through the center again because it's done eyeballing everything. This one is on the side, so it has to connect to the opposite on this side here. And there's going to be a little bit of a bunching up there, but such is life. Okay, not one more. Right there. I think I made a mistake. That line wasn't, that's in the corner, but this is not in a corner. Sorry. That's the one line. Remember the X I didn't want to touch. In fact, I did. Let me try to fix that. Yeah, that's not there. That was this one. Sorry. Just have to correct it here. Okay, we got 10 minutes. I better speed up a little bit here. So we still need to do this one. I think I've now done everything, right? Except that one. So this, I can just go around and see if I connected everything to the center, except that one. I did. Okay, so that's it. So now it's just a matter of taking a piece of tracing paper and literally, even if you don't have your cube, which would help, of course, right? Because you could literally just go look inside. It's like, oh, you know, that's what I might see. But by now, hopefully, you know your shape. So what you can do is take a piece of tracing paper and let's try to visualize it, knowing that I start from the front, and I just do this now with my pencil. So I know that whatever is in the front is going to be not just center stage, but front of the stage. And as soon as I do that, I know because this is open, okay, that's the center. What probably do I see? And I just start connecting my lines and say, okay, that looks like it's visible. And again, from experience now, I know that because I skipped that line, this shape is going to be a rhombus. This shape right here. But I'm looking at it from underneath, right? So if you look at my cube, that's the shape I'm drawing right now, right there. Okay. And as soon as I do my front, I say, okay, now I have to move to the back, kind of going around, and let's just see what's probably there. So I do this, and this disappears. Then I start going sideways, and every triangle, in a way, covers a little bit of the one underneath. If you make a mistake, you can always try to fix it later. But I can see most of it now is going to be hidden. Then here, all these, look at that. Unfortunately, all that is all going to be hidden, but this one is not. So it looks like this is my view, okay, of my roof. And it just so happens that that one just completely hid the rest. But okay, so this exercise with the tracing paper is very useful because it allows you to, you know, quickly figure it out, make a mistake. So and then here, if I were to draw a very light horizon line, I could then put a few of my little people. Somebody said they look like penguins. That's okay. Okay, so make sure they're all, first of all, that they're all standing on the floor and they're all kind of hanging from that line. And this is now where I would make my final using my my straight edge, right? Even though that's not bad, right? But if I wanted to make it really crisp, I could just now take my pencil and and you can see if I try to do this, if I try to do this straight edge business exactly, bit by bit, it's just too hard. So instead, resolving it with tracing paper like this as a sketch, and then once I have that, I can just say, oh, okay, that's what it should look like. I'm now going to finish my drawing. And so that's actually what I'm going to do now real quick. And this would be, this would be your technically, the assignment, right? So to speak. So so the colors do help, but I would say nothing beats tracing paper in terms of just being able to just work with stuff until you know what. And of course, now I can, I can be very precise with my lines, and I can, if I have to fudge a little bit, I can in terms of just making sure my center there is always right, since some of it is going to be hidden anyway. So, oops. See, now I'm unsure, right? It's like, which one is there? Well, no problem. I can just look at my little sketch, which I've already decided is good, is correct, and I can refer to that, and I just duplicate it. So I hope that this process, will help you in, real designs. Like, well, I mean, if you became an architect, you might draw something like, you might design a house like this, but if you're not, it doesn't matter. As an industrial designer, this I think is a good, maybe even for a graphic designer, the process is a good kind of step-by-step thing. My wife, I just borrowed more tracing paper today from my wife who works at the city in public works, and they use rolls and rolls of tracing paper because it's just so quick and so fast, so useful. So I did my roof, and now I'm gonna do the rest. And we can even finish the class on time. After I finish this, I can stay on a little bit if somebody has a specific question. So, so just so you know, next week we're going to do a quick color version of this, and then the remaining 2.5 weeks will just be kind of review. I'm going to try to meet with everyone because I haven't heard from some for a while, and I want to make sure that they're still there somehow. And I might do this other thing, which is I might do a little bookbinding workshop, which is a little tricky virtually because there's steps and construction involved. But maybe we can do it kind of light version. I find books still the best way to read the story, or as opposed to digital, that is. So there we go. So we did it, even though I'm going to do, for fun, I'm going to draw my horizon line in orange. It was nice that my horizon line was slightly lower than, you know, all those spots. I didn't want it to be touching. And I'm just going to draw a couple of people there. Okay, so that's a little perspective. I know it looks a little funny, right? It looks like the floor is sort of falling off, but it's because, again, we were constrained by the paper, and therefore we had to make this really extreme angles. So for the purposes of the video, I'm just going to show again the process. How we found it, how we found all the lines using different colors, and then using tracing paper to kind of visualize what it might look like and do an easy quick fix if we needed to. And then based on that, I did another trace using a straight edge. And it was easier once I had my kind of solution.